since I felt your touch. In more ways than one, that just ain't enough.
We chatted today with Andrew Hughes of the well-known ska reggae band TUGG and his newer Americana band, Andy Hughes and the Mighty Few, inspired by the likes of John Prine and others. Andy talks about Heartland and Heartache, released in 2017 as a solo project, and the follow-up, Songs for Sunday, he released in 2019 with his band. I'm Amy, and he's Brent, and this is Lacrosse Local.
So my name is Andy Hughes. I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio. It's where my father is from. Lived a few places in Ohio, bounced around a lot as a kid. And I'm into music. My mom is the performer, so she always sang in church, played piano. And my dad is the fanatic. You know, there was always records. There was always music playing. So it's like, it's cool. I get both sides. I saw my mom kind of perform in church. My dad is like I am now, just obsessed over bands and artists and things like that.
So I've seen your band in a number of different iterations. You know, I was at the I think the album release of Heartland and Heartache, which was a very sort of folksy Americana album. But you've also been involved with your ska reggae band TUGG for some time. How did TUGG get started?
So TUGG started on the campus of University of Wisconsin La Crosse. It's where I was at college, coming out of high school. So I also finished high school in lacrosse. So I moved to lacrosse my sophomore year, graduated from Central. I was very into sports, but I've always been a writer. So I think there were a couple of guys that I had met that knew I wrote. And so I ended up in a band called Lucid Evolution in high school. And we played the warehouse all the time. And because we were in high school, we could get really good crowds. And so towards the end of that high school band, there was a guitarist, Bob Locke, who was in that band. And as I graduated and went to college, we kind of took what was, I guess, left of that high school band, and we started writing tunes. Jake McLeese, our bass player, had also went to Central, so I'd known Jake for years, and I actually knew him more as a mandolin player. He's always walking around with his mandolin, but I also knew that he loved Sublime, and I love Sublime. There was sort of a feel of that as we were going. It was more of a jam band. We were like a house party band. Interestingly enough, we started at almost the exact same time as what became the Smoking Bandits, and at the time it was called Pat, Jim, and Art. We did these incredible house parties over across from the King Street Kitchen, that big house that used to be a funeral home. We knew the dudes that lived there at the time, or at least some. Every Thursday, we'd have a house party. TUGG would be set up, and then Pat, Jim, and Art would either be before or after in another room. It was a crazy cool time, and those were our first shows. That's how we started. It's kind of how we learned how to play together, play in front of people, and it was a great time.
I definitely remember being in a basement watching you guys play, but I don't know if that was that spot or not. But
no, I bet you I remember that basement. We actually found some pictures from the other day, because there was another place that we played numerous times. It was a cramped little basement back then. But that's kind of what type of band we were. We were geared towards jam music because we were kind of just jamming and exploring all these bands that we liked together. So, but basically started around UWL and playing house parties.
So is there anything, I know that's kind of like your go-to, and I know you explored other avenues and genres of music. With TUGG, though, do you have anything coming up? Are you releasing any singles, or do you have any plans for that band?
We have been recording new tracks with the stay-at-home. I think everybody was brushing up on their audio video skills. See my mic here, and I've got a couple other different setups. I was not very good. I always just sort of did like real rough iPhone demos and would like send them over to Joe. Joe was helping me with some audio stuff. I got an interface, and Joe Ganser, who's our guitarist and multi-instrumentalist, we've actually done 3 or 4 albums in his basement. So we do. I don't know what the plans are. We don't have any plans. We're taking the new normal one day at a time. So we actually only have one show this summer. We're going to be doing one of the drive-in shows at the Driftless Music Garden. But we do have new tracks recorded. We had dropped, I think, 3 songs during the quarantine that we had worked on over the last year or so. So that was Arrows, First Things First, and All Right in the End. And we've got about 3 or 4 other tracks that they're not finished, but like drums are done, and we've done some vocals and stuff. So yeah, we're excited. We're not going anywhere.
Over the last couple of years, you've put more focus on your solo project. You released Heartland and Heartache in 2017. So how did that project come about, and where's that headed?
I'm still doing that too. My favorite thing to do is write songs. That is exactly where that project came from. I can't think of really a genre of music that I haven't had some sort of appreciation for. So I'm like many people, my music playlist is like, it'll go from like Tupac to Johnny Cash and anywhere in between. John Prine is like my hero, along with some other guys like that are songwriters. So if I wrote a song, I sat down and wrote like a 3-chord folk song, I wasn't worried about necessarily like, oh, I got to turn it into a reggae song. After a while, I had a collection of those and approached Joe. It was never like I got burnt out or anything with Tugg. I mean, Ben Rohde, who's the drummer in Tugg, is also the drummer in Andy Hughes and the Mighty Few, and Joe Ganser from Tugg is still my right side guy with folk projects. So I approached Joe, and he was like, oh, these are really cool. Why don't we track them? So I sat down with an acoustic and we tracked what would become Heartland. I think that was the fun part, because after so many years of Tugg, our process is dialed in. This is how we write new material. This just felt like when we were 17, it was like, I got a bunch of songs, and he just said, sit down and play them. And then the cool part afterwards is that as we started structuring the songs, as you know, this area is just flush with like amazing musicians, and I'm lucky to be friends with a ton of them. And so I think it was like 15 guest artists. It ultimately came through. By the second record, that was when we had a core now of that band. I love how it happened, because it reminded me of how I got into music in the first place, which was just organic, and I had songs and nothing to do with them. So we did something with them.
So out of, Andy Hughes and the Mighty Few, what's the number one go-to song that you most enjoy still playing? There's
a few. Misery is one. My wife actually wrote that with me. It's kind of a sassier, it's not like your typical love song. It's kind of like a couple going back and forth at each other. So that was really fun. I love telling that story, because she was like, everything you write, everybody thinks is true. And so I was like, well, finish it. And so she did. And she actually used that line, which I love getting to that line, 8 long weeks since I've seen you, just because it's in your song, don't make it true. And she wrote that. So I'd say that. And then 24 Valley Road.
So the last 3 months have just been kind of crazy, I believe, for everybody, and especially musicians. The ones I'm talking to are, in some cases, devastated not being able to play live. Some have actually found some sort of solace in it, being able to play live more to a wider audience. I know myself personally, I've watched more live shows than I ever do. I probably watched more than I do in a year over these last three months. How has that affected you?
I'm an interesting case study, I think, because as going into this 3 months ago, I was keeping a schedule that I wouldn't wish upon anyone. Saying no to shows just didn't make sense. And so then they stack up, and I also have a full-time job, and I've got 2 daughters and a wife. And it just was like, I just kind of felt like a pinball, just kind of like I'm here and then I'm there. So for me, it was really weird at first and really hard to pull back. I played a ton of live stream shows in the beginning, and I did some fundraisers. I did the Midwest Music Fest, stay at home. Right away, I kind of jumped in. And then at some point, I kind of looked around, and my wife and I are both working from home. The kids were doing school from home. It wasn't like I wasn't going to schedule any more streams or like something that I was like deciding, but it's kind of what has happened. And it's not that I don't want to play. And when I first started doing it, I was trying to raise money for some musician friends. I missed a lot with my family over the years doing what I did. And so I'm trying to restructure that. For me personally, that the schedule I was keeping and missing things at home with my daughters. I have a 13 and a 10-year-old. So in the next, 5 years with my 13-year-old especially, I want to make sure that I'm present.
I think we all had some time to kind of reflect and kind of change some things. Hopefully everyone, got something positive out of it. So where can people find out more if they want to follow you about, either Tugg or the Mighty Few or what's going on with yourself?
So my website's andyhughesmusic.com.
Lacrosse Local Podcast is a production of River Travel Media. Do you have an interview idea you would like to share with us? Message us on Facebook at Lacrosse Locals. Subscribe to the Lacrosse Local Podcast on your favorite podcast app. If you like us, rate us 5 stars. We thank you for it.